Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am Auron MacIntyre. I wanted to go back and catch up on some of the things that happened while the show was on break. Obviously, Monday we had the huge story about Venezuela and the capture of Maduro, and that had to take precedent with the breaking news. But today I want to go back and cover some of the things that were occurring while we were on Christmas break that I think are really important and point us to some really significant developments in the conservative zeitgeist, including what I think might be the death knell of the propositional nation. Of course, we have some more breaking news today. It won't take up the whole show, but it actually weaves itself into the larger discussion we're going to be having. A leftist protester who attempted to run over and possibly kill an ICE agent was shot by that ICE agent, and reports are saying that that shooting has been fatal. We'll go into why that protester is there, why the actions of the ICE agent were absolutely justified, and what this means for the wider narrative about Somali immigrants in that area and everything else that's going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But before we get to all that, guys, let's hear from today's sponsor. Hey guys, scammers and criminals raise the stakes in 2025. In 2026, the choice is up to you. Act or stay exposed. 2025 marked a turning point where threats to privacy and security became more powerful, more precise, and harder to stop. Scams didn't just increase, they leapt forward in complexity. AI began to clone voices, text sounded like family and friends, emails impersonating banks pulled people in. The people hit by these scams aren't chosen at random. Here's how they get targeted. Your personal information, your name, address, phone number, family members, age, and online behavior, it's all publicly available online right now. It's not hidden and it's not hard to find. It's published. You can see it for yourself by simply Googling your name and address. You'll find hundreds of data brokers openly listing where you live, who you live with, and how to contact you. This is how scammers decide who to target. This is how identity fraud starts, long before the damage shows up. As 2026 begins, there's a choice to make. Do you keep leaving your information online and vulnerable, or do you take action to remove it? 2025 showed us what unchecked exposure leads to. If you want to start 2026 with less exposure and more control, use my code Auron for 15% off all Patriot Protect plans. Head to patriot-protect.com/Auron and use the promo code Auron for 15% off the yearly subscription. All right, guys, over the Christmas and holiday break, we saw a couple of developments occur. Obviously, everyone knew that Zohran Mamdani was a disaster. We've talked about it a few times, how the people watching Mamdani kind of build momentum in the New York elections fundamentally did not understand the nature of the coalition he was building. They kept saying things like, oh, don't people understand that socialism doesn't work? Oh, don't they recognize the dangers of radical Islam? I mean, this guy's talking about globalizing the intifada. Aren't we worried about the dangerous nature of Islam in the United States? And don't get me wrong, I have said this multiple times, and I'll say it one more time just to make it clear to everyone. I think Islam has no place in the United States. I have openly and repeatedly called for a ban on Muslim immigration. I don't think that Muslims should be able to hold office in the United States. I am far more radical when it comes to restrictions on both the Islamic religion entering the United States and the practices of the people inside the United States who follow it. However, that's not the main issue with Mamdani. Like, yes, he's nominally Muslim, but he's like I care deeply about the trans children version of Islam, which is to say, not at all, right? Ultimately, Mamdani represents a coalition of people who want to destroy the country. They hate the United States. They hate everything it stands for. They want to bilk the people of the United States. It's nothing but a racial coalition that exists for the have-nots to take from those that built the United States, who actually deserve the fruits of the United States, who should certainly be running the largest city, the most important city in the United States, New York City. However, Mamdani leads this third worldist coalition along with the reliable backing of white liberals in a place like New York. And so he ends up winning this election. A lot of people are very angry about that. Again, me too, but they should really understand why he ends up winning. It's not just because he's ideologically a Marxist or because he's a Muslim, though he is those things. It's because he exists to fleece the American people. He can take from the Americans and give to the paperwork Americans. And that's what he exists to do. Now, one of the discussions that we've been having on the right here pretty aggressively has been what type of nation America is. What is our national identity? The story that was told for a very long time, that has been perpetuated through most of my lifetime, even in the conservative community, is that America is a propositional nation. It's a nation of pure values, completely abstract understandings of who we are. It's not grounded in history. It's not grounded in heritage or relations. It's not grounded in tradition or even religion, though they'll pay some lip service to Christianity. Ultimately, you don't need to be a Christian, or you don't need to have any connection to America. You barely need to speak English. But if you raise your hand and say that you like freedom and working hard, then you too are American. And that's what makes everybody American. This is the Vivek Ramaswamy version of America, right? America is working hard and getting out there, and colorblind meritocracy. Unless, of course, you're Indian, and then you should just hire more Indians, which is what most Indians in positions of power do. But let's ignore that. It's really about hard work, and it's really about equality, and that's what makes you American. Working hard and paying taxes, which is really dumb. Rule of law. Yeah, well, people in Singapore believe in rule of law, man. That doesn't make them American. Like, America has to be more than just hard work and the rule of law and paying taxes. That's an economic zone. That's not a country. We've been having this debate a lot, and there are people who get really aggressive about, me pointing out that the propositional nation is a farce. They always say, oh, well, of course we're a propositional nation. Of course we are a nation of ideas. But the thing is, no matter how often they say that, it's obviously a lie. It's obvious that they don't really believe it. Because if they did believe it, they would actually be pushing for large amounts of constant deportations of anyone who disagrees with the version of American ideology that they think everyone should hold. They would understand that if you don't deport those people, then you can't have a propositional nation. If identity in America is entirely based on assuming the set of beliefs that represent America, then the government basically has to keep a rolling roster of the loyalty of every person in the United States. Do you currently believe exactly what whoever's in charge of deciding what the American proposition is? Do you agree with it 100%? Because if you don't, you're no longer American. You've broken the proposition. But of course, propositional nationalists never do this. They'll say something like we should deport Ilhan Omar or maybe even Zohran Mamdani. But none of that's ever going to happen. And they're perfectly aware that it's not going to happen, because the biggest problem with the propositional nation is the First Amendment. The First Amendment's part of the American proposition. As an American, you have freedom of speech, including the ability to speak out explicitly on politics. That's actually the point of the First Amendment. The First Amendment isn't there to guarantee your right to sell porn. The First Amendment is there to make sure that Americans can speak freely about politics. That's actually what it was meant to do. And when you remove that ability, you are removing a core part of the American proposition. So if a guy like Zohran Mamdani or Ilhan Omar can't get up there and say, I hate America, without getting deported, the First Amendment doesn't exist. Now, to be clear, I don't want these people in my country at all. But understand, that's where the proposition breaks down. If American propositional nationhood means anything, it means love of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, right? It has to. Those are the propositions. Those are the things that are expounded on by the founders. And for them to be foundational to our identity, we must uphold them as sacred rights for the American people. And if the American people are the people who respect those rights, then we have a catch-22. Because the first right of an American is to say, he doesn't respect American ideology. He doesn't respect American identity. That's actually the very first right enumerated in the Bill of Rights. So that's a huge problem. And really, I think the election of Zohran Mamdani pretty much puts a nail in the coffin of this thing. Because Mamdani got inaugurated, sworn in over the break. And of course, every part of it was just absolutely an insult to Americans. So you can see in the picture here, I have Bernie Sanders is helping to swear him in, and his wife is there holding a Quran. So Zohran Mamdani is swearing his oath to be the New York mayor on a pagan foreign holy book by a communist. You've got a communist swearing in a socialist on the Quran. How's that propositional nation working out for you guys? Nothing but freedom of speech happening here. Nothing but the First Amendment. Look at all that freedom of religion. which isn't what the founders meant when they said freedom or, avoiding establishment of church, but whatever. Look at that freedom of religion. Look at that, freedom of speech. It's all right there. It's all playing out right in front of you. It's just beautiful America right there. That's some propositional nationhood right there in front of you. But there's a huge problem. Because what's the first thing Mamdani does once he gets sworn in on the Quran by a communist? The first thing he does is give a speech in which he says explicitly, hey, by the way, I don't believe in any of this stuff. He says, I'm rejecting rugged individualism, long seen as a core part of the American identity, the American proposition. The rugged cowboy who does it on his own, the pioneer, the frontiersman. That's what America is, right? That's the identity. That's the proposition. I reject it. Zohran Mamdani just comes out and says, I reject it immediately. And instead, I think we need the warmth of collectivism, by which he's implying socialism and communism. He stands up, mayor of New York. This is not some guy running, some podunk town. It's not a college professor. It's not even an MSNBC pundit. It's the mayor of New York, the most important city, the defining city of the United States. And he completely rejects the proposition from the outset. What are the propositional nation bros going to do about it? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. This man is an American in their eyes, always was, will maintain his American citizenship. Not only will he not lose his citizenship, he will run the most important city in America and arguably the world as a man who explicitly rejects the propositional nation, the proposition on which people would like to hang the identity of America. And nothing's going to happen to him. He's just going to keep all of his privileges and be very important and wield lots of power, and nothing will happen. So the propositional nation is just a joke. It's a joke, and he's laughing. He's laughing at you. Bernie Sanders is laughing at you. These guys don't care. They don't care. It doesn't mean anything to them. They toss it into a wastebasket tomorrow, and they'll continue being Americans. Because no one's deporting Bernie Sanders for opposing the American proposition either. And there's a real good question. Some of these guys will tell you, oh yeah, of course we've got to deport Zohran Mamdani because he came in a few decades ago and he's Muslim. What about Jewish Bernie Sanders? He's been here for a while, even though he's been a traitor at every level, conspiring with literally communist dictators, going and taking vacations to communist dictators and the lands that they run. Nothing. He's not going anywhere. He's not getting deported. And none of these propositional nation guys are going to deport him either. If they tell you what they are, they're lying. It's all a joke. They don't mean it. They're not deporting Bernie Sanders. They're not deporting Zohran Mamdani. It's not going to happen. These guys are not only going to get deported, they're going to be in charge. So that's the problem with the propositional nation. Because the guys who imply that they value it can no longer pretend it's valid. They just can't. They'll say it rhetorically. They'll still be like, of course, American's an idea. It's different because it's an idea. But they don't mean a single word. They're not going to take any action on this front. They are not going to impose an ideological test on everyone in the country. Immigrant all the way back to someone whose ancestors have been here for 400 years. They're absolutely not going to test every one of those people for American, to adherence to American identity and American proposition, and then expel everyone who doesn't agree with them. That is just not going to happen. And if they're not even going to say they're going to do it. So the propositional nation means nothing. It gets you nowhere. And we can see this not just with Mamdani, who openly rejected the idea of the proposition, but we can also see it with the Somali community. Obviously, another big story that has been blowing up here in the last few weeks has been the Somali diaspora, especially in places like Minnesota, getting together and trying to scam American taxpayers successfully for millions and millions and millions of dollars. They have these fake daycare places. They have these fake learning centers. The pictures were going around. It was very funny. One of them actually spelled it the Leaning Center. And there's this guy, this YouTuber, Nick, starts with an S. I'm sorry, I forgot how to pronounce his last name. But he went around and, to his great credit, did something that should have been obvious. I mean, there have been reports, actually, several reports about the level of scamming that had been going on in Minneapolis with the Somali community for a long time. We know Somali community owns a lot of the politics around there. Literally, the mayor goes around speaking their language, playing these tribal differences in Somalia off each other in his city so he can win an election. He has to speak their language. He has to know their tribal intricacies so he can manipulate them politically. Like, that's the level of control that the Somali diaspora has on politics in that area. They managed to change the flag to look more like the Somalian flag. They changed the state flag to look like the Somalian flag. It is literally conquest. Like, they own the politics, they own the flag. This is what it looks like when you're conquered, folks. And that has been an ongoing sore spot for the Democrats, but it really got exposed when this guy went around to all these learning centers and all these fake daycares, and the Somalis got really aggressive with him. They started to threaten him. Why are you coming here? Because I want to put my kid in here. Oh, no, there's no kids here. Because it's all a scam. It's all fake. They're all empty buildings, right? Like, none of them are actually running any legitimate business that should be these funds should be available for, which the funds shouldn't be available anyway. But they knew that if they ran this type of business, they could get access to these special loans. And because they're Somali, because they're an ethnic minority, no one's going to check on them. Because let's be honest, the government writes blank checks to minority groups in the United States all day. And if you ask questions about it, it's considered a racist. We saw this with COVID and the scams, when they were trying to underwrite all these businesses. You'd see a lot of minorities go out and start fake businesses, collect the checks from the scam, and then just get away with it. No one's looking into it. Now, this was a wider issue. Like, this was actually not just minorities doing this, but there was a concerted machine-like effort to get this done. And that's really what elevates this to a place where people start paying attention. When you have these political machines, that's what the Democrats are good at. They're good at getting organizations out and activating ethnic minorities through ethnic political machines. They know that these organizations they know that these tribal neighborhoods are organized politically because they see each other as being set apart and separate. They are not Americans, and they act accordingly. And they know that they can use the level of ethnic organization in these neighborhoods as a machine to ensure certain outcomes. And one of the benefits is they also then clue these different communities into different scams. Trust me, the Somalis did not do this alone. Someone in the Democratic Party went up to them and said, hey, if you vote for us, we can get you a bunch of money. All you have to do is put together these fake daycare centers. Like, I'm sorry, the Somali community was not figuring this out. They were told. They were coached. This was intentional. So you've had a large amount of conflict there because there has been a lot of talk about whether or not the Somali community really belongs, really should be able to access these funds. And the Trump administration has explicitly called this out as a problem. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people got angry when you noticed who was doing it, right? They say, oh, it's not the Somali community. It's just a handful of Somalis in there. And you find out actually that's not the case. Not that you needed investigative journalism to figure that out, but you understand that's not actually the case. What's really happening here is that ultimately the Somali community is working together, that it's actually a large conspiracy with a large number of people involved across even the people who aren't directly involved are covering up for those who are running this whole scam. So this is all over the place, but it's especially concentrated there in Minneapolis. And so it's absolutely dominating their politics. And this is an interesting shift because before, the Republicans would have been very, very careful about identifying a actual named ethnic community as a large-scale culprit in this behavior. Like, this would have been considered, even by some very conservatives, racist and unacceptable behavior. And Donald Trump didn't care, much to his credit. Donald Trump just came out and said, nope, it's the Somalis. They shouldn't be here. They don't contribute anything. They're a terrible blight. Like, they just need to go home. Again, language that no Republican, whatever you feel about Donald Trump's other, the other things he's done recently, whatever, no other Republican president would have said that. No other Republican politician would have said that. That's something you only get out of Donald Trump, and that's Donald Trump's value. He's constantly smashing the narrative window. He's constantly, when he's at his best, driving the narrative instead of chasing it. And with the Somali narrative, he absolutely drove it. He absolutely drove it. Once those videos are out there, once people were recognizing what's going on, he's out there making those statements that no other president will make. And that's a big shift. I don't think people, we are in such a difficult situation at times. It's easy to look at the amount of progress, the insane amount of progress we made in just a few years and say, oh, well, it's not enough. And it's true, it's not enough. We've gotten to the point, the timeline is so compressed. The issues are so incredibly important that even the big wins we're getting, we can't sit on because they're just insufficient. But the fact that the Republican Party, that the president would say something like this, that the party at large would ultimately follow his lead on this, that's huge. It's a really big deal. And I want to show you a clip to kind of send that home. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, a guy who I think a lot of people, he says, I've always had these positions. I'm not like hyper familiar with Matt Walsh's career, so I can't sit there and say I know all of his opinions over time. Some people said he's just gotten way more based over the last few years. Either way, the point is he is, whether he's held those positions the whole time or he's got them, right now, the point is he has them, and that's critical. Because Matt Walsh speaks on the Daily Wire, which is, of course, a big platform, and he often disagrees with some of the more neocon voices on that platform, which is a big deal. And one of the things he said most recently was very striking. I'm going to play this clip so you can kind of see how far we've come.
Prosecutors proved that Somalis ripped off hundreds of millions of dollars from taxpayers as part of the so-called Feeding Our Future scam. And that's just one of their fraudulent organizations where they pretended to feed children in exchange for federal reimbursements. Somalis have also set up fake autism treatment centers on virtually every block, which is another scam that's cost hundreds of millions of dollars in just the past 5 years. Then there's the adult daycares, the normal daycares, the home health aides, the housing stabilization services, and so on. Somalis have scammed all of it. They've scammed everything. In fact, even before Nick Shirley's video came out, the state of Minnesota announced that they were pausing all new licenses for home and community-based human services providers because, quote, the unprecedented increase in provider applications over the past 5 years far outpaces the increase in people receiving services. So in other words, Somalis were clearly pillaging the treasury, and they were not being subtle about it.
So Matt brings up a couple things there. Again, glad he said Nick Shirley. That's the guy's name. I want to make sure I give him credit. And he says, he's pointing out this is the Somalis as a group. This is not a mistake. This is not individual Somalis scamming. This is a larger problem with the entire community. And we're recognizing that they're scamming this on every level. And very importantly, he points out they're just getting away with it. They were getting away with this, but they got caught because they weren't very subtle. Somali community, perhaps not as adept at fraud as many other communities. And this is critical because, as Matt points out here, the Somali community is absolutely responsible for what happened. Remember, this is a very old Democrat grift, right? Like, this is in no way new. The Democrats do this with housing. They do it with food programs. They do it with crime prevention programs. They do it with drug rehabilitation programs. They do it with all kinds of stuff across the board. They do it with universities. They do it. Everything they have is just a patronage program that is usually designed to funnel money to particular ethnic carve-outs. I hate to break it to you, but they recognize that really they don't need to buy a lot of white people votes. They buy votes from ethnic minorities who they can use to wedge against the larger American population. That's what the Democratic Party does. So yes, the Somalis are doing this here, but recognize that this is a common practice across many different diasporas in the United States. There are a lot of ethnic carve-outs where different communities get specific benefits for voting Democrat. They set up all the connections on purpose to make sure that all these different community leaders and everybody else gets taken care of. The whole thing is a grift from beginning to end. The Somalis are just getting called out because they are just so lazy and dumb with the whole thing that it's too obvious. But really, you could do this with several other ethnic communities, which probably won't get addressed. But the point is, more and more Republicans are recognizing this is not an individual bad actor problem. Like, the only way this works is if large chunks of a ethnic community work together in a conspiracy to do this kind of stuff, which is exactly what the Somali community was doing.
And really, that's the part of Nick's video that was so significant. I mean, everybody already knew what the Somalis were doing. We all knew that the average Somali has an IQ that hovers around the level of mental retardation. Scientifically speaking, that's the case. We all knew that half of the population of Somalia lives on roughly $1 a day. Yes, $1 a day. Something like 70% of the population is below the poverty line. They have an economy so primitive that it's hard to even comprehend it. And we all knew that there was never a universe in which importing hundreds of thousands of these people was ever going to improve this country.
That's huge. Like, I know you guys know this, right? Like, I know for you, you're like, oh, well, obviously, I've known this for years. But I want you to understand that Matt Walsh telling your grandpa about this is a huge deal. It's massive. Those are, I'll just say it, those are just alt-right talking points, straight up. Like, those talking points would have been considered alt-right in 2015. They would have got you banned off the internet. They certainly would have got you thrown off of Daily Wire and pretty much every other platform you can find. They would have got you banned from Twitter. They would have got you banned from YouTube. You would have been done. You would have been done as a person, not just because the left came to cancel you, because the right would have done it. You're talking about the collective IQ of a entire ethnos and saying that disqualifies them from being American. I mean, I'm not arguing with the facts he's presenting, but you need to understand the gravity of Matt Walsh making that argument. He also goes on to point out that they do not have functional economies. They don't have a culture that allows them to exist in the same way that they do. They are fundamentally incompatible with the people of the United States. And moving them here was never going to be a good idea, because collectively, it's a community that doesn't do well, that is incompatible with our culture, that doesn't really have the cognitive or economic capacity to compete and to contribute. So of course they're going to show up here and need a bunch of handouts. The vast majority of them stay on welfare. I think the stat is something like 90%. As he pointed out, living off $1 a day in many cases. But coming here and getting welfare is literally, it's like Christmas. Like, it's like they won the lottery. It's so wildly above their standard of living, we can't even explain it. It's like you getting taken to heaven. Like, that's the level of contrast we're talking about here. And so the fact that Matt Walsh is saying this, I don't even know. Like, it's huge. It's rhetorically massive. And of course it's true. Like, everything he's saying there is undeniable once it's laid out. Once you're allowed to make the obvious argument, these people can't function in our society. They're too dumb. Their culture is terrible. They're violent. They don't know how to take care of themselves. They can't contribute. They don't belong here. And bringing them here is a mistake. Like, again, you could never hear that from any conservative 10 years ago. And here we are, right? Like, this is a huge deal. So that entering into the zeitgeist, I think, again, is just another blow against the propositional nation. I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if a Somalian comes in and raises their hand and says, I believe in hard work and the Constitution. They are not American, and they can't be American. Like, they can't. They're coming from a place that precludes them from being American. That's huge. And the fact that a prominent conservative acknowledges that is huge, because that blows the idea that just adopting the proposition is sufficient completely out of the water. I mean, what do you even do with that? There are people who simply cannot adopt the proposition. They are incapable culturally, intellectually. Like, they just can't do it. And so there's no reason to bring them here. And that means that it can't just be a proposition. It means there's more than just the ideas that matter. It's not just about echoing the ideas. You have to have the capacity to live them out. You have to have a capacity to contribute to a society that's built on and believes in those ideas. And while there are certainly people from outside the United States who are capable of doing that, that number is much smaller than the liberals and even the conservatives are willing to admit. And as Americans, we should have the right to decide who's coming here, whether we want those communities to be here. And we should be able to prefer people from communities that we think will integrate and adapt, and those that won't. That's a huge step forward. It's a huge step forward. So I think that these are really some critical things that are going to highlight just how dead the idea of the propositional nation is. If the head of New York, if the mayor of New York, the most important city in the United States, arguably the world, can reject the American proposition while operating that city, then we don't have a propositional nation. If we're required to bring large amounts of people from a place we know is a disaster, that can't function in our society, that literally don't have the cognitive capacity to operate and basically survive off of scamming all of their money out of the government, then we can't have a proposition. Then we have to recognize the propositional nation just doesn't work. It just doesn't. And it's very clear to everyone. And guys like Matt Walsh, prominent voices, are saying exactly that. So we don't have to lie to ourselves about this anymore. I mean, at some point, Zohran Mamdani is just our, now I'm suddenly forgetting the head of England, not England, the head of London, the mayor of London, who's himself also an insufferable Muslim. But he's just our version of that, right? He's just our version of this ridiculous, Sadiq Khan. Thank you, chat. Sadiq Khan escaped he's just our version of Sadiq Khan, where, he goes in nominally Muslim, obviously ideologically doesn't really believe any of that stuff, but really just exists to destroy London, right? Just like, ultimately Zohran Mamdani really only exists to destroy New York. He just exists to extract the wealth out of it and disseminate it to his political groups that provide power to him. That's all he exists to do. Same way that Khan does. They don't care about crime. They don't care about any of this stuff. And Mamdani has gone so far as to say, he's going to tax white people more. Actually, one of his operatives was just caught on camera talking about how white people are going to have to pay the majority of the new taxes because we're going to rethink entirely how property is understood. I mean, he's going full expropriation. He even talked about South Africa as a example of how New York should run. Like, this is a template for New York. We're gonna run New York City like South Africa, where we have like these racial quotas and we extract all the money from the whites and we ban them from prominent positions or demand that people of certain races hold certain positions. Like, that's his plan for New York. Where's the American proposition? How's the American proposition stopping him? It's not at all, right? He's going to do all this stuff. That's his plan. It's anti-white. It's openly anti-American, and he doesn't care. He's going to have Bernie Sanders swear him in on the Quran. And what are you going to do about it? Nothing, right? So no proposition here, right? Just and so guys like Matt Walsh, God bless him, saying, the obvious parts that need to be said. But I'm very glad that he's saying it because, like I say, lends a certain level of credibility for a lot of people who would have found these ideas or these notions, these understandings edgy just a few years ago. And now it's just the obvious point. It's undeniable. You can't have two eyeballs and not understand what's going on here. Now, like I said, there's some breaking news that dovetails into this. Obviously, again, we know that Minnesota has been ground zero for a lot of the Somali stuff. In fact, the whole scandal is so bad that at this point, Tim Walz has actually stepped away from saying he's going to run for governor again. He's going to let someone else run for governor because he's become so unpopular and has such a terrible stink on him after this scam, which he obviously had some clue about what was going on there. If he wasn't directly responsible for making it happen, he was certainly enabling it through turning a blind eye and making sure that reliable voting bloc gets that ethnic carve out that Democrats so love to distribute and conservatives so love to ignore. And so even, this has just been such a disaster that even Tim Walz is in serious trouble over this. However, ICE has been, like I said, running different, extraction operations in that area. And as we have seen, many ICE officials and agents have been protested during this. In some cases, violence has been attempted to get them. Never forget that we would have multiple dead ICE agents. It wasn't for the fact that liberals are so stupid and so incompetent that a progressive sniper shot the people who were being detained rather than the ICE agents in a van. Like, he murdered those people, and it would have been ICE agents if he wasn't just so stupid. That's the only reason we don't have several bloody graves due to these left-wing Antifa terrorists who are constantly attacking ICE agents. One of the things they love to do is try to run over ICE agents. We've seen this multiple times. They're cowards, of course, so they don't want to get in physical confrontations, and most of them can't handle a gun, though sadly a few of them have effectively. So they often try to run people over with their cars. And we can see that this is what happens in this footage here. I'm going to play you the recent attack just happened today of leftists on these ICE agents.
Out of our neighborhood.
What the fuck? Dude, what the fuck? Dude, you did a murder for what?
Dude, you did a murder. The left is so pathetic. It's so pathetic. This guy's just screaming Reddit stuff after a real life murder. So this is something you have to understand. And we've talked about this before, but it's worth repeating because the left keep doing it. Okay. So this woman decides she's going to run over an ICE agent. Now I'll show you that it's hard to see in that particular clip how he really did get hit very hard by that car. But I'll show you the other angle in a second. But the thing that happens here is that they decide they're going to, drive out and hit this ICE agent. They open fire because they don't understand violence, right? The left does not understand violence. Violence is something that happens in a Marvel movie. It's something they've seen in Call of Duty. It's something they watched in, their favorite TV show. I've seen 90-pound girls fight federal agents. Of course I can take on ICE. Well, no, this is real life. And in real life, when you try to run over an ICE agent, they shoot you, and they should. That shooting is absolutely justifiable. 100%. That is an attempted murder. You drive a car at anyone on purpose, that's attempted murder. Cars will kill you. That ICE agent is incredibly lucky he didn't get pulled under that car and killed. When someone drives a car at you, you are absolutely 100% being assaulted with a deadly weapon and have every right to shoot that person cold and dead, which is exactly, it turns out, what happened. Reports have come in that the person in that car has been killed after that shooting. But again, zero sympathy here. Absolutely deserve what she got for attempting to murder an ICE agent. Sorry, I have no qualms about this. You attempt to kill an ICE agent, they should kill you back. End of story. And that's exactly what happened here. And all the leftists can do is scream, "You did a murder!" Because, they don't understand anything. They have no real life interaction. They have never been in a street fight. They didn't go to wrestling class. They didn't take up boxing. They're not doing jujitsu. They're sitting at home, screaming at Trump, yelling at their computer. They are not familiar with violence. They do not understand the cost. So they'll just go out and do stuff like this because they're also used to having a free pass. They get away with whatever they want. Liberals don't get in trouble for violence. We see this over and over again. Whether it's the riots, the January 6th and Antifa riots, repeated violence against ICE agents in general, they think that they can get away with what they want, and they've largely been right. There's been some arrests. Trump administration did turn up some of their enforcement here in the last few months, but in general, the left have gotten away with all of this, and so they just think it's their right. They are the political aristocracy. They have the right to political violence, and you don't. So if they run over and try to murder an ICE agent, they're just allowed to do that. That's something that leftists get to do, and you're not allowed to fight back. And so when they actually see the wages of their violence, remember that guy who got shot because they attempted to ram the truck that had the ICE agents in it, and the stray bullet hit the guy who's filming the whole thing because they thought it's a game. They just think it's a game. They're allowed to just assault, ram, attack. Nothing should happen to them. They can't even process when the violence actually plays out as real death and real horrible injury, nothing computes for them. And they think that they're just going to get away with everything. So, of course, she thought she was going to get away with this. And she found out, actually, you're not. Actually, if you try to run over an ICE agent, they're going to shoot you. Let me play the other angle so you can see how directly you got shot. Or directly you got hit. So you can see with that footage slow down and from the other angle that this was a direct hit on the agent. Right. Agent's in the corner. He's completely hit by the car. Easily could have gotten pulled under that tire. Sorry, the minute you start driving towards an officer, they have the right to shoot you. That's just how it works. There is no way he didn't know. Yeah, he had no clue whether that person's going to swerve into him and accelerate. Right there, already clipping the guy, hitting him with some speed. Could have gone faster, could have accelerated, could have turned in. Anything could have happened there. And instead, nothing, right? Like instead, recognizes, get out of the way, get that threat to stop charging him, to stop to not be a threat to any of the other ICE agents that are there, because they're just not going to let a leftist run over them and murder them. And of course, again, these people are absolutely outraged. How could you? How could you possibly do this? How could you do a murder? And by murder, we mean like justifiably defending yourselves. Now, some people are going out there and saying, this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be the left. They're going to use this. We're going to get another summer of love out of this. I really doubt it. I really doubt it. Pretty sure that liberal was a white woman. Again, I don't know for sure, but sounds like the crowd there. And there's no way that a bunch of black guys are going to go out and burn down the entire country because a liberal white woman tried to stop some immigrant from getting deported. That's not how this goes. It needs to be a member of the black community in America. It needs to be like some kind of guy that they can rally around. It's not going to be this, right? And it's important because if we didn't have these different angles, the left maybe could run with this. They could get away with this. If it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for Twitter, if it wasn't for people spreading this immediately and showing the different angles and showing the level of justification in this, maybe we would have gotten some violence. But I really doubt we're going to get that because of this. So one, wrong victim to really get a summer of love breakdown. Two, you have too many angles, too much evidence to show that there was justified action here, that the shooting was justified. So I don't think you're going to get that big backlash. There might be the media is going to try to say, well, this is what happens when you try to deport people. But I think any honest person looking at this is going to be like, well, yeah, this is what happens when you try to drive over a guy with a gun, actually. Like, just to let you know, you try to ram me with a car, I will shoot you. Like, end of story, without hesitation, and I will sleep soundly the next day. Like, sorry, that this is just justifiable through and through. So I don't think they're going to get the amount of outrage that they're hoping to out this. I don't think this is going to be some big negative thing, and I don't think the Trump administration should back away or pump the brakes for a second. This stuff's going to happen, and the left has to pay a price. They've got to pay a price. There was just a guy who tried to break into J.D. Vance's house in Ohio. Like, he tried to go to the vice president's house with a hammer and murder him. Now, obviously, he's not there. He's in Washington, D.C., but the guy wanted to do violence. He is a crazy leftist trans individual. Of course, another trans terrorist. But Antifa's still here, guys. The left's terrorist impulses, their desire for blood, their desire for political violence, their what they believe to be their entitlement for political violence. It's all still there. It's all still there, and we need to not pretend otherwise. Look, I know they've been busy with the Maduro thing. But I think it's time for us to focus back on maybe, I don't know, getting those Antifa raids. I thought we were rolling up those NGOs. I thought we were hitting Antifa. I thought we were taking out the network, defunding it, putting these people in jail. Yeah, we need to do that. We need to go right back to that right now. It has to happen. And I don't care what the left says. Oh, they're cracking down on protesters. Whatever. When the protesters are trying to run you over and kill you, you're right to crack down on them. The end of the story. When they're organizing violence online, when they're using places like Discord, still to this day, I promise you, Discord is hiding these people. They are coordinating on Discord right now, I promise you. As long as these companies, as long as these NGOs, as long as these organizations are allowed to work and to conspire and to build this leftist violence network, this terror network, it's only going to get worse. This needs to get stamped out. It needs to get rooted out. And I hope this makes it clear. We shouldn't be soft on these people, because when we're soft on them, this stuff happens. This stuff happens because the left thinks they can get away with it. They think they can get away with it. They think there's going to be no consequences. We need to show them there are direct consequences. Give them harsh consequences now so you don't have to run them over like a bug on your windshield later. Don't get me wrong. This guy's completely justified, but of course I'd prefer that the ICE agents not have to shoot people trying to mow them down. Like, ultimately, I wouldn't even call this a tragedy, because the person who did it on purpose and deserved to be shot. But this is something that you could deter if you were sufficiently cracking down on Antifa and its organizations now. If anyone showing up to an ICE protest knows they got no funding, they got no backing, because I promise you, a lot of these people are just being rented out by NGOs, right? Like, these are rent-a-mobs. If they know that taking that, $100 a day for standing outside, some facility or harassing ICE agents, if they know that $100, $200 a day could also come with some serious charges, or if that money dries up because the NGOs don't have it anymore because we actually, recode them and destroyed them, well, then you're not going to get as much of this stuff. You're not going to have these people standing out in front and trying to run over officers, trying to assault them, trying to charge them, all this stuff. If you go ahead and take away the incentive, you're going to get fewer and fewer of these incidents. Again, guys, totally justified in the shooting. Not saying anything bad about this shooting at all. Very clear, very obvious, totally justified. However, you can reduce this by going after the NGOs, going after the funding, going after the organizations, making sure that the platforms that are facilitating these organizations are taken down or restricted or penalized, or sent a sharp enough elbow to know that they cannot allow leftists to organize on their platforms. You start sending those messages, shutting down those NGOs, making arrests, you're going to get a lot less of this. So I'm just encouraging us to go back to that plan. That plan's critical. That plan's important. It needs to get done. All right, guys, let's go to some of your questions here real quick. We got a few of them. Let's see here. Clone 362. I need to get rid of this so I can actually see it. Clone 3632 says, had an honest talk with my boomer parents over Christmas about Vivek and Heritage Americans. They won't be voting for him. I made it clear immigration is the real issue of our time. And that's good, right? Like, and you should say that, again, you don't need to have a lot of malice. You don't need to have any, particular animus towards Vivek or, any wider community he belongs to. You just need to explain, look, this guy is not honest. I know he's saying some talking points that you like from some of your favorite talk radio hosts, but he's fundamentally anti-American. You can see it in the way that he messages. You can see it the way he refers to American culture. Like, this is just not a guy you should trust, right? It's very clear. And I think that's pretty obvious. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't really want Democrats to win a race, but at some point, Republicans have to learn a lesson. I'd prefer they not learn it this way. I'm not like rooting for a Democrat here, but guys like Vivek, the Republicans have to know they can't support these guys anymore. They can't put these people up as leaders. We're done with this. We're done with this token model minority stuff. Okay. Like, there are genuine good leaders in some of these communities. And if they rise up, great. But Vivek is obviously astroturfed, and he obviously doesn't love this country. And he obviously should not be involved in leading any part of it. And I think the fact that even his Democrat opponent can hit him on this is pretty impressive. By the way, if you didn't know, Vivek quit social media. Like, he gave up on Twitter and Instagram because it's been so deleterious to his campaign. It's been such a disaster. His behavior has been so bad on those platforms that I think, like, someone just told him, dude, if you don't get off of these platforms, we're just going to pull all your money out. So he actually backed away. So he actually got pushed off of these platforms. His behavior is so bad. He was so roundly ratioed and completely opposed in all of these statements online that he actually had to leave the internet. So that tells you everything right there, I guess. Florida Henry says, don't forget Miami just elected the first Democratic mayor in 30 years. Yeah, obviously, Miami, because of the Cuban diaspora and its anti-communist leanings, has always had, some opposition there. But I can't say that I know enough about the changing dynamics in Miami, and I should know more. It's a large city in my state. I just don't go there enough. I'm not a big fan of the area, to be honest. I've only been there a few times, even though I've lived here most of my life. So I just don't have enough personal knowledge to speak on the evolution of the current races there. Maybe that's a fluke. Maybe that's a indication of shifting demographics with other Hispanics and other minorities moving in. Maybe that's an indication that Republicans have lost that stronghold due to policy or something else. I really don't know. So I'll try to look a little more into that, but I don't want to speak with authority when I don't know. And the right wing coalition says, when are you bringing Dave Green back on? I mean, I love Dave. I love talking to Dave. He has an open invitation on the show. The hardest thing is that Dave just works a lot and he's got a lot going on. This isn't his full-time job. He can barely carve out time for his own podcast. And he's also several time zones away from me. So coordination becomes a problem. I'd have Dave on every week if I could. I think he's a very smart guy and a really good guest and a very good host in his own right. And so always happy to have Dave on. It's really just more of when we can make those stars align than anything else. It's often harder than getting a heads of state on it at some time. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, but I want to thank everybody for watching. Of course, if it's your first time on this channel, you need to click subscribe on YouTube, click the bell notification, all that stuff, so you know when we go live. If you'd like to get these broadcasts as podcasts, make sure to subscribe to the Auron MacIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. And when you do leave a rating or review, it helps with the algorithm magic. Guys, new year, I'd love to see the show continue to grow. It's already been growing, but just keep pushing. Appreciate you actually subscribing, sharing with friends, family. All of that is amazing. If you want to get me any kind of gift, if you want to do me any kind of favor, that's what you can do for me. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as always, I will talk to you next time.